Assalamu alaikum. Uh, our presentation today is about recent advancements in occupational health. And here, recent advancements doesn't necessarily mean in the few past years, but actually, the improvements in occupational health have already started tens of years ago with the last industrial revolution, let's say about 280 years ago. So it's not a matter of recent issue. Okay. Uh, Occupational hazards exist in everywhere. No place is completely free from occupational hazards. Only the type of the hazard or the intensity of the hazard might differ. Recent trends reveal that there has been a huge jump in the number of occupational injuries despite various legal reforms being introduced. Understanding the impact of these hazards on the workers is the need of the hour, which means it's an urgent need. Before speaking about the recent advancements, we better to start with occupational health challenges. So it's better to start to know the occupational health challenges, and then after we can go to discuss the recent advancements. Let's start with the first challenge in occupational health practice, which is the misconcept about occupational injuries and illnesses. Let's say that the history of occupational health and safety had witnessed many or tens or even hundreds of horrendous disasters among a sector of people who already were recorded to be the poorest segment in their communities with very bad health care and were considered just only tools in production. No one was caring about that sector in the population. So accidents, terrible diseases, impairments, disabilities, handicaps, and life losses kept inflating and increasing over many centuries. The misconcept and the idea that workplace deaths and injuries is normal. There's a trend among people that workplace accidents, workplace injuries, it's normal among workers. It was well established and more even were often seen as a result of individual carelessness, not due to workplace bad circumstances. So workers were almost always accused to be the careless and neglect to be behind every accident. And by the end, they were the only persons to be blamed for their injuries and delay of work and even loss of production. Nothing were not pointing to any work maladjustment in the workplace or even hazard substances. All the story was attributed to workers' neglect. Okay, second point on occupational health challenges is the current practice. And the first point under the current practice is fragmentation of healthcare system, which means that occupational health services is completely separated from general health services. Very simply, suppose you are in clinic, receive some person with a health problem that can be attributed to workplace hazard, and you don't know that, and you didn't ask him about occupational hazard, huh? You will misdiagnose him. Suppose he has bronchial asthma that can be attributed to some workplace hazard, okay, and you didn't ask him. You will treat him as a ordinary case of bronchial asthma. First, this is a misdiagnosis, which will continue in no need. This will lead to more chronicity of that disease, which is unrecognized. Third, here the patient is going to develop complications because he's misdiagnosed, mistreated. In that way, you are giving or you are continuing in giving him extra treatment, which can be avoided simply by adjustment the exposure to the health hazards in his workplace. In this way also, you are raising the rates of sickness absenteeism with low productivity, inability to reintegrate the sick person or injured person back to the workplace. He will need in the future a rehabilitation, and this will cost more with cost of legal compensation. Many public health problems cannot reach working population, just like smoking quit, like alcohol and drug control, diabetes control, hypertension control cannot be uh, conveyed to that sector of population. So fragmentation of health system away of primary health care is a big problem in occupational health practice. Second challenge in the current practice is the scope of occupational medicine that started to be enlarged and enlarged to include a diverse spectrum of occupational health services like aviation medicine, like military medicine, like diving medicine, sports medicine, space medicine. These are just only examples. Okay. Uh, Now we are coming to the third challenge, which is the demographic trends in occupational medicine. Uh, let's speak about aging labor force. It costs more, women labor concerns, child labor concerns, migrant workers concerns, and vulnerable groups like informal economies and unseen labor force, also domestic and household and home-based works, bonded labor, and human trafficking. So there is a growing need to understand the health requirements of each group and be implemented into the basic occupational health services that will impose an extra load. Because each group has its own health problems that may add to the already existing problems in concern with work, consequently add more and more to the service load, and to the burden over the very limited or the already very limited occupational health services worldwide. This is an extra load. Okay. Novel innovation. Here I mean the recent sources of energies, just like renewable energies, with the swift and unbearable blow-up of technologies, had added an extra burden on the unprivileged or the already unprivileged and disadvantaged sector of people. Understanding the impact of these hazards or newly added hazards of new technology, of new innovations, of new sources of energy already had put an impact on the already weak occupational health services. The fifth challenge in occupational health practice is disasters. Occupational health and safety professionals usually play vital roles in emergency preparedness and recovery. Some common hazards include downed power lines, carbon monoxide poisoning, exposures during floods, or even collapse of structures and buildings, and so on. It's a burden in occupational health hazards. The healthcare workers, as the first responders to such disasters on the scene to face such tragic and challenging, dangerous situations, usually are responsible to provide emotional and physical support. They are usually responsible to provide emotional beside the physical support, emotional support and physical support. So they are under burden and usually attacked by, let's say, depression, by stress, by suicidal tendency. This is known as post-traumatic syndrome. Also, among the natural disasters as an occupational health challenge, the global warming, climate change, especially that recent scorching global heating that affects especially outdoor workers and increase the risks of heat stress, heat-related disorders, uh, even with occupational injuries and reduced productivity at work. Uh, Also, among the natural disasters, that very recent one, which is coronavirus, that severely disrupted the labor market, especially businesses that depend on face-to-face, depend on face-to-face communication or close physical proximity between co-workers or even between workers and their customers. Uh, COVID-19 caused tremendous economic cost, as all we know. Outspoken healthcare workers at the front or at the forefront of the response to COVID-19 are risking their lives and their physical and mental health. This not only affecting the workers, but in addition, their families and all the community. Uh, as a challenge to occupational health services also, in military conflicts. It's not a new trend. It's not recent. Military conflicts actually occupies all the human history. Since the start of walking on the earth till resurrection day. Anyhow, conflicts with deaths and injuries as well as displacement of populations, hundreds and thousands of population, usually cause breakdown of health system, even with the healthcare collapse. The emerging trend of attacks on healthcare workers is characteristic of some conflicts in some areas in the world. So protection of health personnel and health services and humanitarian workers is no longer respected. This is a disaster in occupational health field. Uh, Also, we can consider globalization as a challenging trend in occupational health due to rapid technology progress with the expansion of chemicals, electronics, biotechnology industries. Thousands had been added every day during the past few years. Uh, has introduced new risks. I mean here the chemicals and electronic and biotechnology industries have introduced new risks and widened the spread of work-related risks and increased their interaction with non-work factors in ill health, such as environmental pollution. Here, the service or the improvement or the revolution in service and transport sectors has increased the risks and hazards of such new chemicals or electronics or new biotechnology industries. Economic globalization also may affect the structure of jobs. Actually, jobs linked to certain economic activities may tend to disappear, and this what happened in many sectors of work. Whereas jobs linked to other maybe new activities are created due to changing competitive advantages and patterns of specialization. Let's say, by the way, the delivery industry has been tremendously inflated and increased during the past 2 years due to COVID-19, for example. Now, we can speak about the new horizon in occupational medicine, or let us say the recent trends. Again, I make it clear once more, recent years doesn't mean a few 10 years or few 20 years or even the past 100 years. It started since more than 280 years. So the first one is better change the concept. The concept we discussed it before is or was only the worker is responsible for his injury and accident and work loss and work delay. No. Now, refusing that idea or refusing the idea that workplace deaths and injuries are normal It's refused now, and not in all cases as a result of individual carelessness, but may be due to workplace maybe due to workplace circumstances. So, the new recommended practice recognize the finding and fixing hazards even before they cause injury or illness, which is far more effective approach than waiting for occurrence of accidents to fix it. So, Uh, worker is not the only tool in the injury, but also the workplace hazards, workplace exposures, workplace design, workplace technology, workplace structures, preventive techniques, preventive measures, administrative measures. So the old concept is obsolete nowadays. Okay, now the second recent trend is better health for all. We have to understand that the right to health for all people means that everyone should have access to the health services they need when and where they need without suffering financial hardship. Understanding health as a human right, workers as an extra important sector in our communities who we depend on their work to support our lives deserve quality standard of health care as any other member in our societies. So the enjoyment of the highest attainable standards of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being without distinction uh, based on race or religion, political belief, economic or even social condition. Uh, uh, Also, better, greater focus on total health. And here, I mean, um, it's a very big mistake if we concentrate on health conditions related to occupational health hazards. Now, the vision is adopting a holistic view to health and wellness to support the overall health and well-being of workers, both on the job and off the clock. I mean here off the clock, of the job. So persons' overall health as diet, physical fitness level, mental stress, sleep quality, mental health, smoking, drinking, drug use, family history. Now, all of these aspects became uh, concern of occupational health practice as a new trend in occupational health. Again, as a recent trend in occupational health practices, understanding the health needs of some workforce sectors and vulnerable groups, and not ignoring the right in health and good wages. So, understanding the health needs of such groups, especially elderly, women, as we talked before, children, in addition to migrants, also non-formal labor, is very important burden on occupational health, and it's a new trend to understand, to study, to give recommendations, to give solutions of health problems of such groups of workers. Uh, Here we come to the most, now I can say that it's the most recent trend because it started, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago. We speak here about novel innovations. The first of novel innovations is smartphone applications for the health and safety industry, which have numerous applications. Uh, the first innovation in a smartphone application is the site inspections and incidents reporting, and I'm giving here an example, which is known as iAuditor. iAuditor is no more than software in the smartphone that enables the user to get a lot of information in many files, to be put in many files as audit information. Such audit informations are stored to be compared with each other to establish trends over time. And so the software enables the user to create a digital safety audit and checklist template. Also, Safety Compass as the smartphone innovation. This compass identifies the worker physical location and can send him alert signals against the nearby hazard. Such compass sends the signals or the alert signals to the worker phone or tablets. Also, the phone camera here, along with the GPS inside the camera, combine together to detect more and more information in his workplace. So, such compass can help the worker to avoid probable or highly likely risk that may exist in his workplace. Third innovation in smartphone applications is the manual lifting applications. This application is usually calculating the risk index of manual lifting tasks. It raises the worker awareness about personal risk and potential hazards to their muscles or musculoskeletal health. So, such innovation or such tool can tell the worker about the proper way of lifting techniques, especially of heavy objects. So, we can freely say that this tool aims to reduce the incidence of lower back pain and injury. Third innovation in smartphone application is the ergonomic applications. Each application here can provide the workers or the users by information about proper stretching and exercises in workplace, and even provide some games and challenges to be used during break time. Some other applications can be used for improving mental health, visualization skills, and breath exercises. Second novel innovations after smartphones is the wearable digital technology to improve personal health in the workplace. The idea here is just only by incorporating the protective personal equipment with some chips that can collect data and information about the work. It's a type of real-time monitoring. It's done second by second. Such chips can monitor or can collect data about the worker second by second during his existence in the work. Such data may include vital signs like blood pressure, heart rate, respiratory rate, blood oxygen. Also, such chips that can collect data about steps walked, how many steps walked during work, sweat levels, workers' fatigue, even stress and alertness. Uh, Smart safety eyewear, it's another innovation in the wearable digital technology. It's just only a display in the corner of lens and allows information to be seen or visualized on the inner aspect or the inner surface of such eyeglass while being worn, so giving users access to sensor data. Such display can make an alert to the wearer or to the worker against such hazards and provide them with documents and information. In the future, it's possible in the future that they can prevent people not wearing such eyeglasses from entering risky or hazardous area. How? By not allowing the doors to open. Something just like the fingerprint or the face camera in airports. Smart helmet is another level of intelligence. It's usually doing something like meta-analysis. Usually it's called or it's using meta-sensor that evaluates situation. It collects information about the workplace and can make a meta-analysis and can evaluate the situation according to such information. Accordingly, it can provide information and significantly enhancing their protective function by such meta-analysis. The integrated acceleration sensors can detect, it's very sensitive to detect collisions, can detect free falling subjects, can detect any unexpected immobility. Uh, Other sensors can detect high or low temperature, humidity, can detect ambient brightness, even can enhance the communications in between workers. Here, the possibilities we can say that they are endless. For example, there could be a chip inside safety helmet to alert the wearer if it has been worn or has had any major impact on it. Okay. After that, smart safety gloves also, it uses chips that can be integrated in the safety gloves, enable the users to access information by their phone or tablet. The gloves can be customized and modified to have access to the machines or any infrastructure in the workplace. Such chips in the gloves could be programmed to bring up the data sheets for the glove when scanned. So first, the worker can scan his gloves or can scan the chips in the gloves to get data sheets including all the information about the workplace and the possible health hazards. So it can be used to avoid such hazards and to reduce the risk. Smart gloves can also have a chip in them to ensure the worker is wearing them or that they are wearing the right gloves for use in a hazardous area. It means that chip in the glove can inform the worker if he is wearing the proper glove or the convenient glove for such hazard or not, or he has to change it to another glove. Also, the smart safety shoes, including such chips that can detect and evaluate. So it can detect and evaluate any hazardous situation, such as, for example, risk of slipping, risk of collision with others. So even it's alerting the wearer to avoid contact with nearby coworkers to minimize the risk of collision. Even more, here the tools can evaluate itself. For example, it can tell the wearer, I mean here the worker, if such boots are not properly fastened or even were faulty. So it's a very high level of intelligence, even in our shoes. By the end, smart work wear as wearable digital technology as a recent innovation. This incorporate gesture control without touching. So it can detect any minute gesture of the hands by using 3D gesture detection. So by waving hands in front of a machine, it can or we can switch on or switch off such machine just only by gesturing in front of such machine or tool by no touching. This prevents potential hazard of contamination. Now we can move up to another recent trend, which is recent unusual hazards. Understanding and awareness of such recent sources of energies and the swift and unbearable blow-up of technologies for better understanding the recent unusual hazards and risks. For the renewable energy hazards is still so far in the field of study to detect the potential health hazards. It's not clearly or not completely clear. Also, many high technology employees are working under very stressful work conditions and under many risk exposures to a wide variety of toxic chemicals, to wide variety of untested chemicals, and to job stress. Even misuse hazards of such new technologies and new chemicals due to ignoring the nature of such chemicals or tools. All these challenges have to be very clear and have to be very uh, well understood. Again, as a new trend is better new preventive strategies. So we can say here that defining basic hierarchical strategic model to overcome such novel hazards, new chemicals, new technologies, new tools, uh, and to overcome the risks in the workplace to improve the risk management. It usually ranging from eliminating the hazard as a first step, which is usually not practical. Then we move up to substitution of such hazard with another one which is less risky. Isolation of the hazard, the engineering control, administrative control, and the use of personal protective equipment. The last one is better diagnosis and treatment. We say it here, targeted diagnosis and targeted treatment. Why should we use the word of targeted? Because until recently, occupational injuries and illnesses were treated just like any other type of injury or disease, which are not related to work. This is very wrong. However, over the past 30 years, occupational medicine services have developed into a separate identity or separate discipline within the medical field, which is completely separated from the other health services, which even presents another form of problems. We will discuss it so soon. Here, the first step in targeted diagnosis, we can say that we have to step forward through six-step approach. First, determine the disorder or disease or the disease. It's just only a general diagnosis. Second, determine the relation in between such illness or such injury or the disease with the work exposure. Third one, to determine the nature and level of the causative exposure. I believe we have discussed it before in last presentation. Fourth step, to consider other possible explanations. I mean here, can such disease or illness or injury be attributed to another factor not related to workplace, or it's limited just only to occupational exposure or workplace health hazard? Last or sixth step, conclusion and reporting the health problem. And finally, we can or we have to recommend the preventive measures and interventions. Uh, the last step in targeted diagnosis is recognition of specialized conditions like environmental factors, workplace substance abuse, drug and alcohol testing services, occupational health support programs, consultative services, other programs that have been existing in general health services like health promotion programs, health education programs, but also employee satisfaction programs and employee happiness programs. Now, moving up to targeted treatment. Again, targeted here means we are working only about occupational health problems. Before, it was one-time treatment. It means we see the worker for one time, give him treatment, and we will never see him again. It was once considered all that was necessary to treat most injured worker. He came to me with injury or illness. I gave him treatment. I will never see him again unless he will develop another health problem. But this was modified to post-injury care, has evolved from a single-step treatment into also an ongoing process for workers with many types of injury or illness. So it started with one-time treatment, it's obsolete now, to post-injury care, it's obsolete now. What are we doing now is ongoing process. It's continuous process of caring about the worker in the treatment. Uh, Now, telehealth services. It's a new technique in in the occupational medicine, telehealth has expanded greatly due to COVID-19. It was developed during COVID-19. It means during the past 2 years of COVID-19 pandemic, since it has allowed the therapist to keep better tabs on patients' progress without the need of face-to-face interaction. So there are several ways that occupational therapist can take advantage of teletherapy, including educating and guiding patients through home exercise programs without visiting him, to provide home safety evaluations by the video without also visiting him, to guide the patients on how to set up and use other assistive technologies at home without visiting his home. All such techniques have developed only during the past 2 years due to COVID-19 pandemic. Patient engagement here is a new technique also, or it's not a technique, it's a vision or idea. It means creating a better dynamic interaction and relationship in between the patient and his therapist. Why? To encourage the best possible outcomes from his treatment. Patient doesn't have to be the passive recipient of treatment. Patients must take a more active role in the treatment. He must exchange information and experiences with his therapist. He must be involved in gathering information and making even decisions about the symptoms and treatment. He must be actively engaged and contributing to their recovery even after treatment. This ensures that the patient is doing their part to achieve the highest degree or level of functions. Here, virtual reality technology, which allows patients to participate in simulations of real-life activities. Such tools give occupational therapists more opportunities for addressing cognitive decision. Expanding into new territory. This is a new trend also in occupational medicine practice that has occurred during COVID-19 pandemic. Due to shrinkage in the job market, occupational therapists have moved and started to invade different new fields like sleep medicine, like diabetes management, childhood obesity, driver rehabilitation and training, many fields, ergonomics consulting, artificial limb research and development, assistive device and technology development. Also, if we remember, I told you before in the start of this presentation that there's a wide gap in between primary healthcare services or general health services and occupational health services. But if we discuss it in little more detail, we can find that the principles of primary healthcare is better health for all. The main interest is the clinical diagnosis and therapy. If we move up to basic occupational health services, we can find that it's based mainly on the principles of PHC, which means that the aim is better occupational health for all, but not for all population, for all workers. The aims here in PHC or in BOHS, which is Basic Occupational Health Services, are based on Alma-Ata Declaration. The aim or the main interest in basic occupational health services here is diagnosis, therapy, but in addition to prevention and control. And if we speak about basic occupational health services, we can find it by no means it's not universally available for all workers. It's even not even or not equal in same country. It's very high in some very well developed countries and almost zero in almost also the developing countries. This is unacceptable. Especially we speak here about very poor sector of our community, and they are the least protected sector. Finally, we can find that principles of PHC and basic occupational health services are aiming at the top of such pyramid to equity of health services, or supposed to be. Now speaking about the values of PHC concepts, which are almost the same values of occupational health services, we can say that it's equity, solidarity, social justice, principles of multi-sectoral action, and community participation. Almost they are the same values and norms in occupational health services sectors. So we move to the right. If we allow some channels of intersectoral action, I mean here some interaction in between the authorities of PHC and the authorities of occupational health services, the authorities covering working population in some area or in a given territory, and integrated approach to health in working and family life. I mean here interaction and cooperation in between both sectors, the PHC and occupational health services. Definitely, this takes us to the end of the right arrow, to the right end of the red arrow, which is scaling up the occupational health services. Finally, by the end of this presentation, we can state that there is a big or an urgent need to stretch the primary healthcare services to encompass the basic occupational health services by integrating both together. And here I never mean to give the occupational health services to the primary health care. No, I didn't mean that. I mean just only incorporation, not even incorporation, it's some integration both together. At least the PHC physician should have the least ability or the least skill in detecting any health deviation due to probable workplace exposure. Again, the PHC is not responsible to diagnose any occupational health problem or any work-related health problem, but at least have the minimal experience in detecting the possibility of relating any health problem in front of him in his clinic due to any occupational exposure or workplace health problem. Finally, if the primary healthcare physician at least have the minimal experience and minimal skill in just only, not in diagnosis, just only in detecting any health problem that may be traced back to workplace, this is very good. This will avoid any insufficient primary prevention or prevention of work-related health problems. I mean here by early detection of such work-related condition, I can avoid any insufficient prevention in work-related health problem. We can avoid chronicity of unrecognized diseases. I told you before that misdiagnosis of occupational health problem can actually lead to chronicity of such disease. I can avoid more complications. I can avoid extra treatment, which is unnecessary. And also, I avoid rising the rate of sickness absenteeism. I can avoid inability to reintegrate sick and injured workers back to the workplace. And I can avoid rehabilitation cost. I can avoid cost of legal compensation. And I can avoid many public health programs that cannot reach the working population. Finally, the early detection of any possible health deviation to workplace health hazards that can be detected by well-skilled or well-experienced health physician in PHC is a very big favor for the occupational health medicine practice. Okay, this is final, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I'm ready for any question or discussion. And thank you for all.